Adoption, were there any errors or omissions?
Move the minutes be adopted.
The minutes have been moved. Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is carried. Thank you. The next committee meeting date is scheduled for February the 2nd, 2021 at 4 p.m. in council chambers. Item number 1, Housing Agreement Bylaw number 10214 to permit the City of Richmond to secure affordable housing units at 5740, 5760, and 5800 Minoru Boulevard. Mr. Spencer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have nothing to add to the report, but are happy to answer any questions.
All right. Are there any questions from committee? Councillor McNulty.
Yeah. Thank you. Can you hear me? Am I?
Yeah,
You can?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I have a couple of questions on this, if I may. Starting with the integration factor on our page 13. I understand the affordable housing units are going to be in a standalone building. Is that not correct?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, yes, that's correct. As the applicant has agreed to enter into an MOU with a nonprofit operator, staff have accepted the clustering of the affordable housing units as per the direction provided in the affordable housing strategy.
You may not be able to answer this, but if I can go back, Harold can answer it. Many years ago, we had an integration policy with affordable housing units to be integrated into buildings so that we don't have the idea, well, that's the rental units across the way, and the attitude towards the idea of ghettoism. And I have concerned about that. In recent developments, we haven't seen that policy. I believe, and I ask the historians to help me out, it would be in the time of when Evelina Halsey-Brandt and Linda Barnes were on council or just got on council. We made sure that we had integration and we didn't have standalone. So I'm just wondering where that is, and has that ever been referred to or looked at again?
To the chair to Councillor McNulty, the affordable housing strategy directs the city to allow clustered or standalone affordable housing buildings if the developer agrees to enter into a property management arrangement with a nonprofit housing operator.
I know the policy allows that, but I guess my question is, I think it's council that decides what is going to happen, not whether the developer allows what's going to happen. This is the easy way out for the developer to wash their hands of any rental housing and take their profit and run on, and it really doesn't lead to good development within the community. And I think we as a council need to start looking at livability and integration of our people within the community in terms of rentals and those kinds of things. So I would ask other councillors to think about that over the while. And as I say, I believe we're in control of what we want to do in this one, because they already have a group to take this on. I would like, if I could, to ask staff to bring that information back and share it with the new councillors and the recent councillors, just for reading. And I don't think we erased that. I know we have adopted a strategy, but I think we need to look at that again. So I would hope that council members would want to do that. The other question I have is with regard to the number. I'm glad he went from 47 to 88, because I sure wouldn't support it if it was only 47. What percentage is that of rental versus residential units? And are these residential units that he has, are they market rental?
I believe in the report it says it's 19%.
It's 19%. But are they market rental? Are they going to be on the market, or are they going to be under BC housing rental with regard to
You mean the other units?
yeah, the other units, the other.
Mr. Craig, can you help us on that one? Okay, how about Mr. Erceg?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Madam Chair. In terms of the proposal, the standalone affordable housing building is consistent with Council's consideration of the rezoning application last year. You may recall that originally this application came forward consistent with the city's affordable housing strategy. It was referred back to staff for us to look at increasing the number of rental units on the property. We did through successful negotiations increase the number of units to 88 as referenced. The standalone building was also identified in the rezoning process. This housing agreement is simply following through with the agreements established through the rezoning process.
Can you recall what the other units are? Are they rental? Are they for sale? Or?
In terms of the other units in the development, they are intended to be for sale condos.
All right,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Ersick, your hand is up. Did you want to add something?
Madam Chair, Mr. Craig dealt with it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Steves.
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with what Bill said. I think we need to review our policy because it was a policy at one time that we wanted all the units integrated. The way we have with the co-op housing, you can't tell who's subsidized and who's paying the full rents in the co-ops. And that's what we intended with the rental housing in Richmond, and I think we need to get back to that. We can't change this now. We've already done it, but I'd certainly like to see staff take that under advisement.
Ms. Somerville?
Through the chair to Councillor Steves. We did do some work when we were updating the strategy. In discussion with our nonprofit organizers that are now managing many of these units, they felt that it was easier for them to deal with units when they were clustered. They were easier to deal with the supports and services for those clients. We'd be happy to relook at this and to have discussions with our nonprofit organizers. But what we're finding is that their management of these units and their support with the tenants that are in these units is really valuable for our lemur units. And so we can do some further work here and bring this back to you. We understand that it was moving away from some earlier work that was done that was saying to move away from clustering units. But the value that is associated with having the units together to support those clients with the services that the nonprofit provides is of higher value.
Okay, if I could just make one further comment. I think it's equally valid that we should contact and talk to some of the people that live in these units because we had determined some time ago that they were being discriminated against. And if they're not being discriminated against now, I'd be quite surprised.
I just wanted to comment that over the last several years, I do recall that this has become more of an issue, especially with the standalone buildings, because we're getting more units. And when you get to that critical mass, like over 40 or 50 units, it does make financial sense, and as Ms. Somerville has alluded to, some more social aspects, it makes sense to have the units in a standalone building where it does allow the service providers to actually provide those services easier. I think when you have the smaller number of units, the 3, the 4, the 10, the 12, it also makes sense to disperse them. I will note in this application that all the affordable rental units have access to all outdoor residential amenity spaces and shared indoor amenity spaces with the market residential units. So there is that. Councillor Day, and Councillor Steves, your hand is still up. Councillor Day?
Madam Chair, you make some very good points. So my question to staff is, originally they came back with 47 units and we said no and sent it back. Is the reason we went from 47 to 88 because of the standalone access?
Through the please, Mr. Go ahead. Through the chair to Councillor Day, the original rezoning that came forward with the 47 units was also for a standalone building. The referral back to staff was based on two aspects. One was the amount of affordable housing provided. The other aspect was the consolidation of the units and access to the indoor and outdoor amenity spaces within the development. So while a standalone consolidating building was always proposed with the development, the referral increased the number significantly. We were also able to advance the discussions with the applicant in terms of who the nonprofit operator of these units would be, and we're able to secure unfettered access to indoor and outdoor amenity spaces as indicated by Councillor McFarland.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, any other questions from committee? All right, seeing none, there is a recommendation in the package.
recommendation.
The recommendation has been moved. Is there seconded by Councillor Steves? Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It is carried. Thank you. Councillor Day, your hand is still
Can I
up.
make a referral motion?
Councillor McNulty?
Yeah, I'd like to follow up on the referral, just for the record, that we refer the policy on the integration back to staff to come back with a refresher or bring that forward. But also I agree with Harold that we talk to people that are living in these kinds of units and the quality of life, and we find out what the quality of life is, et cetera, with these people in terms of their livability, and be brought back at a future date. So I'd officially refer that back to staff.
Okay, there's a mover. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Day. Thank you. Any discussion on that referral? Councillor Day?
Yeah, thank you. I was going to make that motion. Good, well done, Bill. That's great. Can we add to that make sure that we maybe send out a survey, an anonymous survey, to each and every one of the people who are clients that are in low rental housing? Because I think we need to find a confidential way that they can express to us how they feel and how their daily lives are impacted, and whether the arrangements, whether they're living with regular market rentals or only with other low rentals, how that affects the quality of life. I think that knowing your client is the best way to serve them. Thank you.
And I would accept that as part of that referral, Your Worship, but I also like to see RCSAC members who have housing units like community living, et cetera, Richmond Committee on Disability, et cetera, be contacted, part of this whole survey. And I have a meeting on Thursday, and I'm going to bring it up at that time as well. So,
Councillor Steves? Councillor Steves, did you have a question on the referral? No? All right, seeing no further questions, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is carried. Thank you. And was that clear, Ms. Somerville? That was clear? Great.
Thank you.
All right. Item number 2, application by Gradual Architecture, Inc. for rezoning at 6520 Williams Road from the single detached RS1E zone to the low-density townhouses RTL4 zone. Mr. Craig and Mr. Rockerby. And we do
thank you, Madam Chair.
Also, we do have Ian Guan, the architect, is on the line if there are any questions. Sorry, go ahead.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Nothing to add to the report, but I would like to highlight a couple of the key aspects. So this rezoning involves a single property and results in 8 3-story townhouse units. The city has secured improvements to Williams Road as well as the intersection with Sheridan Road as part of off-site improvements. And there would be 2 on-site trees retained as part of this development, pending further review at DP stage, as well as 5 off-site trees. Happy to answer any other questions.
All right. Any questions from committee? Councillor Day.
I think this is a unique use of this property, and I think the fact that it backs onto a park is going to make it a lovely place to live. My concern is the property to the east, which I'm assuming is 6540 Williams, having 3-story townhouses on a higher elevation because of flooding. Isn't that going to shadow that home significantly?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, the 2 lots to the east are under current active rezoning application for townhouse development. In terms of this development, it does respond to the city's Arterial road guidelines in terms of separation to the site to the south, in keeping with it being an existing single-family home. Long term, and hopefully within the near future, we do anticipate that the rezoning application for townhouses on the adjacent site will come forward to council for their consideration.
Okay, so that's imminent. That's great to hear. Now, I want to make sure that the people who buy in this complex are aware that they're going to connect to the next complex. We've had too many times when homeowners have come forward going, well, I didn't know they were going to add on to the unit. Like, whoa, where did that happen? Will there be some sort of guarantee that the sellers of these townhouses will make sure that the new owners understand that there's an addition coming and there'll be access from their complex?
Through the chair, Councillor Day, yes, should this rezoning proceed, we will be registering a statutory right-of-way over the driveway. That statutory right-of-way will be noted on title. As part of any disposition of any units, the real estate professional and lawyers do have to disclose all charges on title. In addition to the charge on title, given the propensity for concerns to be raised, as you have alluded to, we are also adding the additional requirement through the development permit that signage be added to the driveway to indicate that the driveway will connect to the adjacent site in the future upon redevelopment.
Okay, well done. Thank you.
Any other questions from committee?
Move the recommendation.
Don't see any. Mr. Guan, did you want to add anything? It's not. Okay, well, the recommendation has been moved and seconded. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is carried. Thank you. Item number 3, application by Classico Development Limited for a strata title conversion at 10531 and 10551 Anaheim Drive. And we do have Mr. Sunny Chan here representing the applicant, if we have any questions for him. Mr. D'Souza.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The purpose of the application is to facilitate the creation of 2 strata lots within the existing duplex building at the site. Council approved a strata title conversion at the property in 2018. However, the applicant was unable to satisfy the approval of the associated building permits prior to the 180-day timeline. Since then, those building permits have been issued and received final inspection. The applicant has submitted a new strata title conversion application before you in order to proceed with the original proposal. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, any questions from committee? Councillor Day.
Chair, are the 2 secondary suites legal?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, the secondary suites were included in the associated building permits that were issued and received final inspection. So yes, they are legal.
All right, thank you so much.
Any other questions from committee? Seeing none, there is a recommendation in the package. The recommendation has been moved. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Day. Thank you. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It is carried. Thank you. Item number 4, application by Choice School for Gifted Children's Society for an agricultural land reserve non-farm use at 20451 Westminster Highway. Mr. D'Souza, and we also have Mr. Philip Gray and Mr. John Keane representing the applicant here as well, should there be any questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nothing to add to the report. However, a supplementary memo was provided in the agenda package for clarification purposes. It outlines that the subject non-farm use application is for the site with the existing school, which has the appropriate ASY zoning, but is subject to ALC approval. The adjacent property, also owned by the school, is zoned agricultural, but not subject to ALC approval. The application is requesting that the existing school and expansion be referred to the ALC for their consideration. Happy to answer any questions.
And committee, you also note there was a correspondence from Choice School that was sent to us, so hope you've had a chance to read it. Are there any questions from committee?
Move the recommendation.
So, Councillor Day.
I have the subject non-farm use application for the site with the school, which has.
What's that?
Good to hear.
Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Because of the history of this application, I'm a little concerned about where the city sits with on this one. Given that there was a non-conforming use on the property, I think that if we decide to send this to the Agricultural Land Commission, we should send it without an endorsement, and I would move that change.
Yeah, that's been done in the past, so I'll take it as advice later on. Councillor Steeves.
Thanks. I don't support this application whatsoever. The reason the Land Commission doesn't have any records of a school being there is because Richmond never approved it for a school either. And somewhere along the line they got a building permit, but it was never approved by Richmond Council. And it went from, Richmond Council approved a church on the site in 1981 because I was involved in it. And we were quite surprised when the church suddenly was closed and became a school, and the staff gave them a building permit. We didn't do anything about it at the time, probably we should have. And then it became a private school, which is contrary to the Assembly opinion. So, I guess I might think of supporting it if it went to the Land Commission without recommendation and let them sort it out. But the reason that they don't know is we wouldn't know about that.
You're breaking up, Councillor Steves. And is there anything else you want to add?
No, that's it.
All right, thank you, Councillor Liu.
Thank you, through the chair. It occurs to me that this is in a weird spot. It's not like the other assembly ones that are down 5 Road, and then they have their own land behind them, and so they're doing their own farming in the adjacent property. But in this particular property, the adjacent farm is a big, huge farm, and so the conflict is a lot different than if you're just farming your own land behind. And so it seems to me that it doesn't make sense to try and intensify the non-farm uses by adding more students. Sorry, you guys are flashing in and out. I'm not sure if you can still hear me.
We can hear you, but you're frozen there. Yeah. Continue.
Okay, I'll stop my video if that helps.
Yeah.
Does that help at all? Can you hear me better?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Oh, okay, great. So it seems to me that we don't want to intensify. We don't want more kids going to school there. We don't want more activities than there already is on that site because it's adjacent to a farm that's active and running. And like I said, it's different if it's on 5 Road where it's your own farm that you're conflict, that you're adjacent to. And so, I don't think this is a good plan for this land, so I'm not going to support it.
Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Unfortunately, we're in a difficult situation, and I don't think we should be endorsing this. I can recall having lived here back in 1983 when the controversy, and there's tremendous controversy, you've checked with the Richmond Review and News with regard to this particular piece of property. People assumed at that time that the City Council endorsed it, and as Harold said, they did not. And there was conflict back and forth when the idea went on, and it was taken up as farmland. It was taken up, and we had cranberries in the back. So I think for us to be consistent with the previous council, if you wish, by not endorsing it, but letting it go forward to fall within what the ALC wants to do, because they undoubtedly can override us. I think we would be in solid ground to do that. And I'm thinking about in terms of a support of farmland. Their expansion that they want is not very big. It's in the front, and it's really not taking up more farmland, although it's covering a part of the land. It's not going into the back. So I think if we're going to do anything, we send it on, let the ALC deal with it, and their expansion, and go from there. It would be good if we could totally remove it and put it back into what it was back in 1983. But I do remember it well because for about 3 or 4 months, it was the topic of the newspapers and of the day, going back and forth. And I wasn't on council at the time, but Harold could think whether council threw up its arms or how it got. But as he said, they got a building permit to build. Who issued that? Well, let's not ask, but it was done. And so I think we're consistent by just letting it go to the Agricultural Land Commission without recommendation.
All right, I see there's no more questions from committee.
I would move that.
I'm just going to give the applicant the opportunity to speak, because I know that they felt that they missed the opportunity at the last planning committee meeting. Mr. Gray or Mr. Keene, did you want to say anything to committee?
I'd just like to
Can you
just
please
provide a...
Yeah, just please identify yourself.
I'm Philip Gray. I was the board chair of the society for the last 6 years, but I just retired from the board in November, but I'm continuing to shepherd this project along, I hope. I'd like to just say a little bit about the school and what we do. We're not an elite private school. We provide education for gifted students from kindergarten to grade 9, and many of our students have additional learning disabilities, which is common with gifted students. Disabilities such as ADHD, autism, anxiety, and others. These students are known as twice exceptional. They're gifted and they have learning difficulties. We have a specialist teaching and support staff, and recognizing the school's uniqueness, in 2016, the Ministry of Education designated us as a special education school. That's one of only about 15 special education schools in the province, and the only special education school that's designated for gifted. We're a volunteer board. A lot of the history that we've heard about tonight and at the last meeting, we were not aware of. We're disappointed to hear all that. As far as we were aware, everything, permits and everything had been granted for the renovation of the old church into the school way back before our time. At the outset of this process, for us, we had dialogue with the city, dialogue with the ALC, and both organizations recommended that we submit this non-farm use application. We were very surprised at the time, given that the site was zoned assembly, that there were agricultural land restrictions on it. That's a real anomaly that we don't understand how that happened. Anyway, here we are. Our objective for this application is to bring both of these properties into zoning and ALC compliance via the commitments we've made that were requested by the city staff, and then pave the way for us to expand our school by a small amount. We ended last year at 68 students, and the maximum capacity of our existing building is 80. And we're the only designated gifted school in the province. However, whatever the outcome of this application, as a small organization with limited resources and a volunteer board, I would like to acknowledge the assistance we got from city staff in helping us understand and navigate our way through this process. We recognize that the ALC has the ultimate approval authority on this application, but we're sincerely hoping for a positive response from the Planning Committee and from Council on our application. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Gray. All right, I'm not seeing any questions from committee. Councillor Steeves, your hand is up. Is that from before? Okay. Now, okay, thank you. What I'm hearing is that we'd like the words endorsed removed, so the recommendation that I'm thinking people are thinking of is that the application by Choice School for Gifted Children's Society for an agricultural land reserve non-farm use at 20451 Westminster Highway be forwarded to the Agricultural Land Commission.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor McNulty. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Day. Are there any more comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is carried with Councillor Liu and Councillor Steeves in the opposition. This will go to the next council meeting on Monday, January the 11th. Thank you. Item number 5. Steveston Village Heritage Conservation Grant Program, Council Policy 5900. Mr. Conkin.
Good afternoon through the chair to the committee. This is a report we are providing to recommend some ongoing amendments and tweaks, if you will, to the Easton Village Heritage Grant Program. This amendment would look to try and secure some exterior improvements to the character and quality of the finished buildings in the village as part of grant applications. What we're proposing is 10% of the overall grant funding would be utilized for exterior improvements. Heritage Conservation Plan would be required to secure a grant moving forward. The cost split would be increased to a 60% grant, 40% by owner, and the amount of the grant that can be utilized to prepare the Heritage Conservation Plan would be increased to, from 10 to 15%. Happy to answer any questions from committee.
I have a question to start us off. Can you tell me if you know what the cost, the average cost of a heritage conservation plan is?
At this time, through the chair, it's hard to put a general figure on that because each plan will be unique to its building and its site. I can advise committee that Heritage Services is working on an update to the city's heritage inventory at this time. That project was endorsed through committee and council, I believe, in 2018. In that, every statement of significance for heritage resources has been updated, which is usually a significant portion of the cost of a heritage plan. So that has recently been updated by Don Luxton, a heritage consultant. So that will, in fact, assist people in future to reduce some of those costs just because we've already done the work ahead of time. So probably I couldn't put a value on it through the chair. Again, they're all unique. They all depend on what the quality of the building is and, if I may, the scope of the work proposed.
All right, thank you. Councillor Liu.
Thank you, through the chair. I looked it up online, and so maybe I'm confused, but so for a certified heritage consultant or something, it seemed like there was like 3 in Vancouver, and one of them works for the city of Vancouver, so it doesn't sound like there's a lot of them. So when you say that, each project sort of is its own discrete thing, and so if you're trying to get your heritage conservation plan, so I'm thinking of the bike shop. So the bike shop, for example, you got 15 grand to put on a new roof. But so if the total project was $30,000, now you're saying 10% of that project has to be fixing up the face of it, and he's got to have some consultant come in. So like we've looked at other things when someone has a consultant. If you have an agrologist come in, it's going to be $10,000, $12,000 to have someone tell you how you're going to farm. So it's probably going to be, 10 grand for somebody to come in and do this. So your $30,000, roof is now going to be $45,000 because now you've got to do a reface and you've got to have this person come and tell you about your plan. Like, are we going to end up with people with, not fixing their roof because they just can't afford to have it get that far down the road? And then we're saying that it's going to be 2 years. Like they have up to 2 years to get the job done after they've come to council, after they've done all this. So we're asking them to put a lot of money up front, right? And then it seems that we've also heard from the Heritage Committee, and they had a lot of misgivings. They came forward with a lot of misgivings about, it being overly onerous, it being overly restrictive. So all of their comments seem to be negative comments towards this. So I'm wondering, did they have any positive comments on this recommendation?
Ms. Lucier attended the meeting. Cynthia, is it possible for you to chime in on the comments of the commission, please?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, they were not opposed to the proposals involving the requirement for the Heritage Conservation Plan necessarily, because they did recognize that there is a long-term benefit to having that plan prepared. It would help in any future, grant applications, for example, if they're requesting, if they're doing their work incrementally. The majority of their opposition was focused more towards the lack of, or not requiring visual enhancement.
I guess where I'm going with this is that my fear is that if we put this in place, it's overly onerous on the owners up front. Is there some way that we could have two parts of the grant so that they could access some funds at the beginning to afford this heritage consultant to help them build their plan and then go through with it, so that we're not tying their hands so far in advance and requiring so much money in advance? Because I think we all want Steveston to have a more robust heritage conservation plan. I think we can all agree on that. And so how do we make it more affordable and reasonable for the businesses to get there with this is what I'd like to see. I'm wondering if maybe we just refer it back and maybe come up with some solutions or suggestions or options for that.
Madam Chair?
Sorry, Mr. Ursig?
Certainly you could refer it back, but the short answer to your question about whether we could as a city front end the work of the consultant is yes. It's your money. It's money actually that we collect through development to redistribute to the 17 heritage resources that were identified in Steveston. So you can do that. This is here, and I'm aware of the concerns of the advisory committee, and it is an advisory committee. You're not bound to it, but we've had a couple of cases where the city has provided substantial money to projects without any attention to the actual presentation of the buildings to the public domain. And it raised flags at the staff level with me. And the last time we brought the application forward, it also raised comment at committee or council. I think we dealt with it through GP. So that's why you have this, because we think we've got a good program, but at the staff level, we think that being able to secure tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars without actually addressing any improvement to the public domain, we think that's an oversight. So that's a bit of background, but we could make the change. If you wanted to front end an amount of money, $5,000 or $10,000 for consulting work, you could refer it back, or you could simply provide us direction without a referral back to do that as part of the program. There are no bylaws here. It's simply a program that the city administers.
If I can, through the chair, it is a council policy and a program.
Yeah,
so yes, we would need to have some direction to front end that money, but we could do that. Yes.
But it could be done today rather than do a referral.
That's correct.
All right, let's...
I'd be supportive of doing that.
Okay, we'll come back to you. Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Do we have staff in-house that could do the historic consultation plan, or at least direct them in the right way?
To Councillor, no, we do not have any registered heritage consultants. There is a group and there is a membership that they belong to in terms of their area of expertise. So we have a lot of knowledge and historical experience with these, but we are not heritage consultants. However, typically we have relied on an external consultant to do the work.
If I may, through the chair, we have knowledgeable staff, but I think from a liability and for other reasons, it's not advisable to have staff be doing the work for applicants. That we do not do that for any other type of situation or application.
Okay, my second comment is that according to the letter dated November 4th from the Richmond Heritage Commission, it states that this is overly bureaucratic, arbitrary, subjective, and burdensome, and subsequently they made a motion that the Richmond Heritage Commission recommend that the requirement for visual enhancements to street fronting facades be removed from the proposed amendments to the Steveston Village Heritage Conservation Grant Program as outlined in the draft 5900. Would staff be able to work through without referring it back if we decided to make that change?
I'm sorry, if I may, through the chair, Councillor, do you seem to fade out at the very end? Could staff do which? I didn't quite hear you.
If we made a motion to amend this so that it did not include the required 10% towards the facades of buildings, can we still move forward with this, or does it have to be referred back with that change?
If I may, through the chair, if there's no support for the 10% contribution towards facades, then there is, if I may, there's no need for this amendment at all, because that is the key to this proposal, was to secure a portion of the grant. So if there's no support, this could stop here today.
But isn't just to clarify, according to, we're increasing it from 50-50 to 60-40, and we're increasing it to 75-25% for nonprofits. So that could still go through, couldn't it?
Through the chair, it could. However, the point of those differential splits was to deal with the offset of the conservation report requirement as well as exterior facade work. So if there is no support for the exterior facade work, then there isn't any need to change the funding percentages, because the requirement would fall away.
I'd like to ask Councillor Steves, I mean, I know you've been renovating, or not renovating, upgrading and stabilizing your historic home for as long as I've known you, and yet not that much has been done on the outside. You know, I mean, percentage-wise, much more has been done on the inside for the infrastructure than for the outside. Is not correct?
The big cost of the house is definitely the inside, unless you've got a lot of drive out. As we worked around the outside of the house, we found a front house, an ant colony with 1,000 carpenter ants in it, so that cost us a little bit. But most of the work is done inside.
All right, moving along, Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I wanted to follow up on a couple of things from where Councillor Liu was going and others. I'm not so concerned about the monies and the mechanics within this. I'm actually concerned about the tone of the report and the fact, does this measure what we want to have in the village of Steveston? And does this lead to the heritage that we want in the village of Steveston in terms of the spirit and the mosaic and the historical significance? And I would say the best people to consult are the pioneers who have lived in Steveston over the years, and what we want Steveston, we see Steveston to be. I think too often, I think we have to have our rules and regulations in, not only for those 17 buildings, but I would suggest any other development in there. Harold and I will remember when we got burned on the station, how we got burned on the Illich building in terms of what we thought it was going to be, not that it came, and how we were able to get the Mukai building in a heritage manner. And that came in the 90s and the 2000s. And I think that's the important part of the whole report. When I hear an advisory committee questioning the consultant, whether it be heritage or not, I'm not a heritage consultant, but saying what are his qualifications, etc. I keep wondering, where are they going or where are they coming from? To me, we want to keep Steveston as historic as we can, from the 1908 photograph, which is probably the first one that we've got of the village, and try to keep it all the way through, and wherever we can. And we know that Steveston and not the town site, but around the town site was as it is today, as it was in 1890 with William Herbert Steeves. So I guess that's my concern, and I think we should be having that in this kind of report on it. Whether we want boardwalks down there or not, because Steveston was all boardwalks at one time in terms of sidewalks, or a combination thereof. What we got around the bank is great, and I think those are the kinds of things we want. We talked about facades earlier. I think we have to insist on facades that are a heritage nature of what Steveston was. So, and even with the false second floor. So I would think that we want to, this is what we would like in the, or at least I would like to see in the report, whether we give them X dollars to do this or Y dollars to do that. I don't think that the issue is what is the result of giving them whatever to help encourage and develop that and maintain it. And to me, is maintaining of Steveston. If we erode any more, there will not be a Steveston. And I think that's the thing we've got to be very careful of. There are people that would love to buy those things, and I know many of them are sold. They're changed from a net shed to almost an auction place, which is really probably they auction cattle off from 130 years ago. But whatever, the usages are being changed immensely as well. And that's something I think we should insist on and maintaining. So this is what I'd like to see. So I'm not sure what, I heard somebody wanting to, a few moments ago, to refer it. I think these are the kinds of things we need to look at. It's right. Not the, for me, it's not the mechanics on page 121 or whatever, whatever. I think we should be looking at 100% on facades and those kinds of things, roofing and everything along that line. So that's where I'm coming from on it. And, I forgot who it was that. It
was Councillor Liu, and we'll come back to her.
If you're going to make a referral, I would support those things. Looking back, but consulting a wider range of people, consulting historians from Steveston, consulting people, as well as the academic consultant of there, what it looked like, what it is, and where we're going, and even to compartmentalize certain areas. Every blocks in Steveston looked differently. Everything from lot 10 to where the fire hall was to where we've just continued to keep the Steveston Hotel. From what it was in the 30s and 40s. It wasn't that in 1896. I can show you the maps. It was across the street, as a matter of fact, as well. It wasn't in the current location, but it moved off the next year. So those are the kinds of things I would like to see us in our whole report. And I think probably the whole thing should be reported back to the advisory committee to have a real look at and say, hey, what are we looking at? Thank you.
All right, Councillor Wolf.
Mr. Conkin had his hand up. I don't know if he wants.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Councillor. Through the chair to the committee, I'd like to just remind the committee that our transportation department is still working on the streetscape referral. Mr. B and his staff are continuing to work on the final stages of their work to get something back, which deals with, if I may, Mr. McDuffie's comments on the boardwalk, the type of finishes, and the street arrangements for parking, etc. So that will be coming back shortly for you.
Thank you, Councillor Wolf.
Thank you very much. Just have two follow-up comments and a couple questions to staff in there. I'm not a voting member on this committee, but both of these points I think are relevant to if there is a referral or amendment. So the first one is hearing from staff that a heritage consultant work has been completed citywide for the inventory. I'm curious, is there a parallel grant program that's in the works that is going to be emulated off of the success of the Steveston Village one? Or at this point, is there no look at doing anything beyond the 17 buildings at this point for the granting?
Through the chair, Councillor Wolf, at this point, the grant program was tailored specifically to generate contributions through development for the 17 identified resources. So those were the buildings that were identified in approximately 2008 as the jewels in the crown, if you will, that we were to do our best and our level best to preserve and use funds to support their conservation and their restoration. So at this point, it's limited to the 17.
Oh, okay, sure. Oh, sorry, is there someone else? No. So I just wanted to follow up on that then through the chair. I do feel a couple of the jewels maybe fell off other places on the island, and I think there is, if there is a referral, perhaps we can expedite the similar conservation program to the rest of Richmond. And my final one is as the council liaison for the Heritage Commission. I was present at that meeting where the discussion and the notes in this package came from. I will say that staff were able to respond to the feelings that were brought up by members. I think maybe, like was mentioned by another councillor here, going back to the commission and actually providing them visuals instead of just responding verbally. It might have assisted that discussion and perhaps altered the final vote that they did make. I'm not saying that we should alter it, but it might have made it more informed. And I do feel on both sides, the side that the commission voted for, saying that there's projects that some of the members have seen where people are struggling to do it. They want to do a project and they can just afford the roof or one aspect of it, and they can't handle adding money somewhere else. So some of those commissioners had experienced those applicants in the past. So I think that's where some of them stood their ground on. And then I'll also say that on the other side, the visual enhancements. I know that there's great work that gets done inside, and Councillor Steve's place inside. I'm sure it's absolutely fantastic to have all those heritage features. But if the outside world doesn't see it and value it, then they're not going to want to emulate that in other ways. So I see the comments on both sides. So I just thought I'd mention what I took from that meeting. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Steves.
I think if this is referred back, staff should dig up the Sakamoto report, which dealt largely with facades, as Councilman McNulty mentioned. When we first started this program decades ago, 100% of the funding went to the facade. And in the case of, I'm not sure if Bill remembers, but it wasn't on council at the time, we tried to save Heroes Grocery, which was a pretty fantastic Japanese architecture, and we offered them $100,000 to just for the facade, and they turned it down, and the building was demolished. But that's where the program began.
All right, thank you. Councillor Liu, coming back to you, did you have a referral in mind?
No, I don't. At this point, I don't know that we actually need a referral. I like where staff's going with this. I think if we want to look at other properties in Richmond, if we want to talk about some other things like that, that's a different discussion. But the whole spirit of the grant funding was to help various groups be able to afford to do, fix their properties and maintain the heritage features. I think what we're wanting from them is to add the heritage conservation plan to help them prepare it. And so my amendment, if you will, is to make grant funding to support the work of the heritage conservation plan available at the beginning of the application. And so we've said that they have up to $150,000 of grant funding. Up to 15% of that is available for, it's already embedded in this whole thing, right? Up to 15% is available for your consultant, and so therefore that makes just the math works to say that essentially $22,500 would be the maximum available with a big project to be available to help pay for the consultant, so that we're not putting it onerously to our business owners and people in Steveston. We're helping them get there to where we want them to be, to get that conservation plan in place and to give them support to do the facade. So that's what I'd like.
So you say that again then? The amendment would be to make it up front?
Make grant funding to support the work of the heritage conservation plan available at the beginning of the application.
All right, is there a seconder for that? Well, there is no second.
Okay.
All right, so there's a recommendation in the package, or does anybody have an idea for referral? So my point of view, actually, I like the idea of going back to referral because I think that, and I kind of liked where you were going in the beginning, Councillor Liu, that this could be onerous for some of the businesses, and I think that we all do want to see the facades and the outsides of the buildings brought up to or kept in the heritage fashion. So, I don't know, I'll open it up to the floor.
I'll move referral back to staff to endorse to address all the comments made by the councillors in the previous conversation.
Did you get that, Mr. Clerk?
It's all encompassing.
Is there a seconder for that? Second. All right. Did you want to speak to it, Councillor McNulty?
No, I think everybody has spoken, and I think this doesn't just include Steveston, includes this kind of report would include all of Richmond as well in terms of our heritage buildings, and I think others need to be identified as well. So I think it's a good opportunity for us to make sure that if we're serious about preserving heritage, that we come up with the right model for what we want to see in Steveston, because Richmond is being eroded from a heritage point of view, from my opinion, a personal opinion.
Is there any further discussion? Councillor Steeves, is that from before?
Keep my hand down.
Councillor Day?
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I think that it would be smart to refer this back, and I really appreciated the comments that Councillor Wolf made. He was at the meeting. He heard the tone of what was going on at the commission, and I think let's just clear the air, make sure we're all on the same page, and I'm sure with more information, they will feel more supportive of this. And let's just do a better job of communication with them. And I'm sure when it comes back the second time, it might have some minor changes, but I think it's going to be supported by everybody. So thank you. I will be supporting the referral.
All right. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It is carried. Thank you. Item number 6, comprehensive review of the Arterial Road land use policy designation along Railway Avenue. Mr. Conkin.
Madam Chair, just making sure my microphone is on. Yes, we are, and I'm just going to scroll to the page of the report, if you can bear with me for 1 second, please. So this report has come to you in response to 2 council referrals that we received related and arising from a development application that was on Railway Avenue. The first referral was that staff worked with the applicant to look at alternatives for the land use on the specific site, which we handled in the separate report from Mr. Craig, and that staff undertake a comprehensive review of the Arterial land use policy designation. We have done that. We looked at the existing lot configuration and number of lots that were available for development under the Arterial Road strategy. We looked at a total of 18 different sites that were evaluated based on their lot geometry and their configuration. And we are recommending that 9 of those sites could be redesignated for higher density to bring more density to the railway corridor. We are looking for council endorsement to proceed to public consultation with the various neighborhoods on that proposed land use change. The second aspect of this report has been provided in terms of a generalized response to a number of comments that we've received over the last year or two on the transit future or transit supported density along the Railway Avenue corridor. What we've done is we've worked with a set of information that we received from TransLink. We'd like to, as the report states, that decisions on transit service are provided and made by TransLink as the regional provider and the provincially authorized transit provider in the region. The simple statement that we'd like to convey to council, and we'll have more opportunity as we go through, is that there is no guarantee that BC Transit brings transit service based on land use and density. They have the set of guidelines that are referred to in this report that they utilize, and they ask regional governments to utilize as well for their transit-related work. They use those guidelines for consideration of additional transit service. It doesn't mean that if we build it, they will come, to quote the movie line of the earlier years. What we've done then is taken those guidelines provided by TransLink and provided 2 scenarios that would support a discussion with TransLink for consideration of different levels of transit service along that corridor. As we stated in the report, that type of density is would be new. It's contrary to our OCP. It would be a move away from our regional context statement in terms of where the regional government has in fact considered our population growth. Council has already identified that our city centre and our neighbourhood service centres are where we would be considering this type of density. And as you can see from the scenarios that we provided, we're looking at up to 77 or 80,000 people on this corridor that would be required to provide the level of ridership that would be supportive of that level of transit. I also want to note that the guidelines from TransLink break down transit service by bus and by rail. It doesn't say it's Canada Line, i.e. an elevated line. It doesn't say it's an at-grade rail. It just talks about rail service. And so the key there is that there's no guarantee TransLink will provide service, and we believe that this type of density would be contrary to your OCP and the intended uses along the railway corridor that have been adopted to date. We have staff from transportation and from policy planning who are happy to answer any questions that may come up. Thank you.
Thank you. And just for committee, we did have on-table correspondence from Councillor Steves. You probably had it emailed to you. I'll open it up to committee. Councillor Steves.
Yeah. Thank you. I will not be supporting the report, especially the comments about TransLink. At the Metro Vancouver level, I've been privy to all the discussions on TransLink, and their number one choice is to run the future major bus service to Steveston down the Railway Avenue to Williams Road, down Williams Road, whatever the thing is, goes to the next subdivision along 7th Avenue. And their intent is that we should densify that with apartments. In other words, yes, we would have to build more apartments along there than we would have along Railway Avenue. Their second choice is to do it along number 1 road. Now, the report says that TransLink requires us to be adjoining various densified communities. Well, along Williams Road to Eastern and 7th Avenue, there's no densified communities. In fact, north of our place is all huge monster houses, single-family homes that are worth a couple of $1 million each. I take the 406, they're basing the whole theory on the 406 bus service and how many people use it. And it is the most heavily used bus service. But when you get on the bus at Steveston, you might have 5 people on it. From Steveston Highway to Williams, nobody gets on it. You maybe get a couple of people on it at Williams Road, and then from there on up, the large amount of people get on at Blondell, at the school site, the corner of Gradual, and all the way along, because that's densified with apartments. And they're basing their entire concept of where the main transit route across Richmond would be on the amount of traffic that's generated from Williams Road North on Railway Avenue. So it seems to me that if we go the Williams Road west to number 1 road, or west and along 7th Road to Chatham and 7th, that it will require an equally large increase in population. So I think that that's an invalid argument. So before this goes ahead, I would certainly like to see analyze what the population is along the 7th Avenue route and the number 1 route, and tell us where these centers are that TransLink is saying we must have, because I would suspect that you'll find that there's very little difference between 7th Avenue, number 1 road, or Railway Avenue. And we've invested millions of dollars over the years in the Railway Avenue route, and I think that we should continue with that. So I will not be supporting the report, but I would like us to see an analysis of number 1 road and 7th Avenue as to whether that should be the rapid transit link or not. My suspicion is, I hope we'll never ever see another Canada line ever built again. That we'll get some ground level LRT like they have at Portland, where we have all kinds of lines going across communities, and this one could be the first one. So I won't be supporting it. Sadly, I want to comment on why they think that either 7th Avenue or number 1 route would be a better transit route across Richmond, Railway Avenue. I would certainly like to hear that argument.
Madam Chair, I wasn't planning to make that argument, but I was just going to note in response to Councillor Steve's comments that what we're recommending, we've had a number of referrals, a couple of referrals. What we're actually recommending is to consult on the existing arterial road policy, proposing to add some density, a relatively small amount, but add some density on 9 or 10 sites. So it is possible to move ahead with that and also take a referral to look at 7 or number one. And I don't have those statistics. So my point is that you could move ahead with what is being recommended and also give us a referral to take a closer look at some other
I believe you already have a referral over Railroad Avenue versus 7th and number one, and that's my problem. This is
through the chair to Councillor Steve. I'm not aware of that.
Perhaps we could ask Mr. B if he's aware of any referral on that. And I was going to ask him anyways, you know, now the Southwest Area Plan was completed a couple of years ago. I can't remember what actually came out of that. Are there any, do you know of any long-term plans for increases to Richmond?
Madam Chair, and to Councillor Steves as well, ultimately, I don't think that there were any increases to services planned in the Southwest Area Plan down number one road or down Railway. I think that the level of service is already FTN at this point in time, and I don't believe that they have any plans to have rail down these corridors at this point in time either.
All right, Councillor McNulty.
Thank you, Worship. Just a comment, we're being asked to allow staff to take this to the community and industry. And I think regardless what happens, I think it's absolutely critical that we take this to the community, and especially those along the proposed transit route that Harold has mentioned. I live right at the corner of Williams and Springmont Gate, where every bus turns the corner going both ways. So I can tell you about transit, what's going on there. I think it's very important that we get that kind of information from people. We can turn this down and change this program later if we see the consultation. That doesn't mean to say we have to endorse it. What staff are asking is for permission to go ahead and regarding to the amendments. Let's see what the community says about the amendments and then make a final decision on whether we want to do this or not, and we want to densify whatever, etc. I think what we have basically is primarily a status quo, what was supposed to be years ago when railway was supposed to be densified. So I don't think it doesn't do us any harm to gather, in my opinion, very valuable information, not only for now, but for the future, and to feed into whatever we want to do along that. I believe the people along these corridors are going to give us their candid opinion. And I'm not sure how we do it, but I believe everybody on either side of the road, directly adjacent to Railway, Williams, it'd be Springmont Gate, Springfield, all the way down to 7th Avenue, be consulted. And I think that information would be very, very valuable. So I think we should support the staff recommendation to go ahead with it on the caveat that it will come back and we'll make a decision whether we're going to accept the amendments or not.
So
Madam Chair.
I just wanted to clarify, this is seeking consultation along the railway corridor. It didn't envision Williams or Springmont.
Well, I do that.
If I may, through the chair, the consultation is on the 9 additional townhouse sites that we are identifying through this report. Any consultation would not be focusing on the future of transit necessarily on the corridor. If that's something that council and committee would like us to take on, we would need to be directed to do that.
Well, we could do both if we wanted while we're doing that. But
if we directed through the chair, that yes, we would need some.
To clarify, what's on the floor, what's in the package, and if you wanted to change it to add to the scope, we'd have to do that.
Well, okay. I think I would accept what we've got for now,
okay.
And then we can add it later at a later date if that's what's happening. I think we need to get more information from TransLink directly through our representatives to Metro Vancouver.
Okay, so Councillor Steves and Councillor McNulty, your hands are still up.
Okay,
Councillor Day.
You know, when I read on page PLN 149 that the density within the corridor would need to increase by as much as 190% to achieve the population and employment to justify rapid transit, we're not going to get it, but we might get better buses. I also feel that too much development has already happened. It's too late. I mean, the horses already left the barn. we're only talking about 7 townhouse sites. So I personally feel that this consultation is redundant. But I won't vote against it. I just worry about staff, spending a lot of time on something that it's not going to go anywhere. But to me, it's just too late. Should have done this 10 years ago. So I'll vote for it, but I don't know that it has any purpose.
Any other comments from committee? Okay, there is a recommendation in our package. Is there a mover for that?
I'll move the recommendation for put on
Moved
the
by
floor.
Councillor McNulty. Is there a seconder? Well, I'll second it for discussion. All right. Is there any speakers to the motion on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Luke, sorry you went out. Are you in favor or opposed? You're frozen. We can't hear you. Can you send a message?
I'm sorry, I'm trying to unmute myself.
Okay.
In favor.
Okay, so that
I'm in favor. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you. So that is carried with Councillor Steves in the opposition. Thank you. Item number 7, application by Raman Kuner for rezoning at 10200 and 10220 Railway Avenue from the 2-unit dwellings RD1 zone to the coach houses RCH1 zone. Mr. Rockerby.
Nothing to add to report, but just a few highlights from the rather long report in front of you. So staff did review 2 different land use concepts as described in the referral report. However, in keeping with the original staff report attached, staff do recommend rezoning the property to permit Arterial Road coach houses as per the original recommendation. Happy to answer any other questions about the referral or the original report.
Thank you. I really like the chart that's on PLM 167, 168. It was very clear. Mm-hmm. Are there any questions of staff?
Move the recommendations.
The recommendation has been moved. Is there a seconder? Seconded. Thank you by Councillor Liu. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is carried with Councillor Day in the opposition. Thank you. Manager's report. We do have a couple of items for information. Mr. Craig?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to provide committee with an update on a non-farm use application for a home site severance application that was forwarded to the Agricultural Land Commission by Council in September of 2020. We received a notice from the Agricultural Land Commission in mid-December that application was denied by the Land Commission. We did circulate a memo to Council late December just to advise them on this. Happy to answer any questions.
All right. Thank you. Councillor Day.
For the report, I'm not surprised. Did staff have any further discussions? Because this was the May farm where they wanted to subdivide out part of the property and have it be a separate thing instead of having it owned by the family. I read the report. Basically, if I understand it correctly, they felt that this was not protecting farmland, and which is why I voted against this proposal in the first place. Is that because of the size of the property was the number one issue?
Chairman, Councillor Day, there was a number of factors within the ALC decision. There was previous subdivisions involving the lot. They also felt that the subdivision was not warranted for the statement, that there was other options available.
Was one of those options, like we talked about during the council meeting, that they could simply have an agreement in the family that was their section? Was that one of the things that they talked about from the ALC?
The decision doesn't get into great detail with respect to what options exist. They simply indicated that there are alternative options available.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions on this point of information? All right, Mr. Ursig, you have some.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Updates?
I just wanted to let you know that the next planning meeting is going to be a fairly full agenda, so it should be a lot of fun. We've been working on some fairly large projects and referrals. So on February the 2nd, we are planning to bring the Farming First strategy to a planning committee for consideration. We also are wrapping up a referral to look at passive house and providing incentives for passive house. So we will have a pretty comprehensive report on that, including bylaw changes recommended to accommodate and to incentivize that type of development. And we're also looking at the Lansdowne master plan. So you did endorse it in principle. A bunch of work has been done on the implementation details and preparing the amendments for the official community plan. So that we are planning to put on the agenda for February the 2nd as well. So it's a good meeting to come to or to avoid. I'm not sure which. And then the second thing, I'm kind of sad to tell you about this. You know, the very young Barry Conkin has decided to retire. And Barry will be here till, I think, February the 10th. So he'll be around on the 2nd. But, you know, Barry, just to let you know that Barry is heading into retirement in a month or so. Looks way too young to be doing that.
All right. Thank you. Any questions of staff?
Thank you.
All right. Well, we look forward. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.